on that's more difficult to do.
Go ahead.
Priscilla, go ahead.
I move to approve the agenda.
Yeah. Thank you. Do we have a second? All in favor, Roger?
Yes.
Thank you. Mary?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Marcia, yes. Unanimous. Tonight, do we have any comments that are not on the agenda? Okay, great. Seeing none. The first session tonight is about Tracy tonight over here, Doug Susal and Brianna Gillum. Over to you.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you. So I'm Doug Sonsalo from everyone here. And tonight I'll give you a quick overview of what we're planning to do. We have about an hour. It may not go that long, but we'd like to get input from both the select board and the public, obviously. And the first step that we did was we reviewed the 95 deficiencies. The second thing we did was we assessed the architectural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and structural systems. And that work continues. We're still doing an assessment. We're not complete with that, but I will give you some information on what we found so far on both of those topics. And again, we are in the process of developing existing plans, noting the physical and functional deficiencies. So that's the point we're at sort of right now. And then the goal of this phase is to develop a program and plan that meet the current and future needs of the town. So it's still a dialogue. We're still information gathering and trying to understand what the needs are. Design work has not yet begun, and there's no cost estimates or solutions that we have tonight. We just have information essentially, and we would like to hear from you. Although we do have design concepts that we discussed in the RFP that we responded to, the request for the proposal that brought us here. And those three options were, and this is mostly with the mechanical systems and that are involved, to do limited improvements to keep the building functional for the short term, to do updates to meet the current energy code. And the third option was to update to achieve net zero or near net zero, which is where the building output of energy equals the building input, usually with solar panels or augmented systems. It could either be on the building or remote. So that's kind of the overview of what we're hoping to cover. And I'll just give you a little brief history. I'm going to read quite a bit of this stuff because it's pretty technical. Tracy Memorial Hall, Town Hall, is listed as a contributing building on the National Register of Historical Places, in case folks didn't know that. It was nominated by Anne Silverfarb in 1991, and it was construction in the Georgian revival style between 1938 and 1939. And it was part of the Federal Public Works Administration, the PWA program, on land that was donated by James Tracy, who bequeathed it to the town. And his estate was at $8,000 at the time, including the house and the lot, which was valued at $3,000. For the purpose of erecting a fireproof, there's no really such thing as a fireproof, but fire-resistant town hall on the site. And the PWA provided $22,090 with a grant toward the $49,215 that was the total cost of the project at the time. The building was renovated in 1994, and it is sort of what you see today in response to the passage of the 1990 American with Disabilities Act, which was enacted in 1990, and that added the elevator then. But it has served, and I'm going to read the executive summary that they provided to us. I won't go into all the nitty-gritty detail. So this is the MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing portion of the assessment. So portion of the assessment. So number one, the systems have all been well maintained, and general following is a summary of the recommendations. A, the mechanical systems are at or near the end of their useful life and should be replaced. That's no surprise. We know that it's been happening. The ductless air conditioning systems no longer operate.
Areas. What is the programmatic and functional needs assessment for?
I think that's a tougher one for us the town would really have to say, we really want to change the use of that for us to go there, I think. unless there was like a forecast of a large increase in the staff, that they needed more space or a huge, multi-purpose room or gathering space like that, then we'd start to think about that. But if we're looking at a conference room and trying to connect dots where we separate the kind of public hallways from meeting rooms, we can likely do that with what we have. So it just depends on the town's need for that space in terms of recreation, other things that we've heard that happen up there. It sounds like it's a pretty busy space in a town. So
It is.
yeah, but we can certainly look at the floor to see that's the first we've heard of that comment, that it's at its thinnest. And that does happen with buildings about this age, around 90 years or so, where that gets worn off. It's been sanded so many times. There are other alternatives to wood too that could be explored, but they won't be the same. And we're dealing with the historic preservation, so that could be considered a defining feature of the space, as they would call it. So they tip the same species, cut, all that kind of stuff, typically in a historic building. So there's that consideration. But that's if you're going for grant money.
Okay. So,
Thank you for that structural review, and I understand that you're not trying to present to us your program tonight. We're still developing.
Still hearing.
Which makes a lot of sense. It's occurring to me that there is such a dearth of meeting spaces in town that perhaps you could do a little inventory of what spaces are available. At the moment, meetings are sometimes held in our lovely space in the public safety building. Sometimes they're held in the historical system itself available, but those rooms are very small. Just up the street is another historical building, the Grange, which has been purchased by a group which is planning to renovate it and keep it as meeting space. And I know this building pretty well about having some of those places at some point in other buildings. It wasn't necessarily town hall. Maybe that's a little crazy, but.
So a broader assessment of townwide.
I mean, you shouldn't,
Yeah.
you're supposed to focus on this building.
Yeah.
But I think that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
so basically, you listed a lot of things committed to climate and through things, almost like a to-do list, so that we have, we can put together a price list. I don't want to see us putting money towards something and then having to redo it because the next thing down the list, you're familiar with it.
Yeah, so that speaks to the functional aspect. So considering how the building's used today and what the potential future might look like, although it's hard to pinpoint, we'd want to consider that as the functional aspect, like how many get there. But I hear the need, so I get what that could be, and we could certainly look at addressing it so the functional needs are met maybe for now and X amount of years, if that can be projected. Is it 30 years? I mean, that 30-year renovation served the town really well, so maybe that's a good number to look at in terms of the functional outlay of what the town would expect to do and where it wants to go.
I guess what I'm concerned about off the top is we're always going to have to heat the place.
Oh, yeah.
So the functional
Yep.
needs, I would like to know that whatever we're doing for heating is going to fit, but also we're going to have to be in tune with the roof,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so that's the kind of thing we're going to need your input so we know
Sure.
how not to waste money.
Yeah, so typically, the foundation and roof are your kind of two areas. Luckily, the foundation checks out. We do have some spalling on some of the windows and things, but they're more probably cosmetic than structural, except for maybe that stair would want to be looked at. And that might be a historically significant piece to maintain. I might argue from like if you brought in a state historic preservation officer, they would probably say that. So then, the roof would become really your spot. We want to focus energy, and it's slate, and they do have a long life, and it's still probably the original slate, and it might be right at the end of it. So that would probably be your highest priority, is keeping everything below the roof intact. And then in terms of the mechanical part, looking at return on investment, and obviously since you're a town and you're going to have a kind of perpetual lifespan. So the payback period may not be as critical as it might be for a homeowner, for instance, or someone else. So understanding that is critical for, I think, for the township, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I'll open it up to.
I have a follow-up question. In 1994, the building was vacated so that all of the renovations could be done.
Okay.
And so my question is, when you're putting together this plan for the building, would it be necessary to vacate the building? And would the town need to try to figure out where to house everybody while the renovations are happening?
So that would be one. I know we talked about just a second ago, talking about prioritizing and doing things maybe one at a time, but the most efficient way would be to do everything at once, because then you're mobilizing a construction crew one time, you get the efficiencies of scale. So that would be the ideal situation. That's not always the way money works. You get what you get when you get it. And so maybe there could be a phased approach, but it would be less efficient and it would cause more kind of, if we dealt with the functional, then in that first one, then maybe the other things could happen incrementally, but it's hard to know right now at this point without having exactly the menu in front of us. We know what some menu items are, but we don't know which ones are at the top and and maybe Brennan, and the board can help us sift through those to identify priorities for the town along with us and help develop that.
Well, it'd be good to know what the cost would be if we vacated the building and did everything all at once, or what it would cost if we did it in, say, 3 phases.
And I think that you're going to likely need to do that if you're dealing with some functional aspects. If you're just dealing with the boiler room and you're just trying to do a limited amount of work to get you through, the next however long that the equipment would last, that's one thing you could do. That probably wouldn't necessitate everyone leaving the building, but you might have to phase people in and out or relocate them to one half and then the other or something like that. So it just depends on how far you go with the renovation work.
All right.
And you'd want to do that, like it's likely in the summer, so it's easier to move people in and out and have the heating system offline for a bit, or in a swing season time. So timing will be critical with that too.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen in the public, does anyone have a question? Okay. Maybe if you could come up here. Good. And at the same time, if other people have questions, maybe you could just kind of get in line.
My question is very brief, although I might have some more later. Jack Cushman, I'm a resident of Norwich. I see reading from documents, there are preliminary reports. I assume they've been given to the town. Are these documents and reports available to the public to inspect? Thank you.
So this one I just got at 12 o'clock. So I don't think I've sent that to Brennan yet. This one I got on the 12th. So I can't remember if I sent you that one, but I don't think these have been sent.
My basic question is, can we have access? Because this is complicated material.
Yeah.
We would like to be able to see them on the select board website.
You're hearing what we're hearing for the first time.
Right.
So,
But the documents themselves.
And we have no issue sending them along. I just may not have sent, for sure, the structural report. I don't think I've sent that one either, but I can do that. And
No big deal. It's simple. If you have documents, we'd like to have access.
we can provide the drawings as well for you. Yep.
anyone else? No one in the audience here. I think I saw a hand. Cheryl Lindbergh, you were first.
Yes, thank you.
That these folks.
Cheryl Lindbergh, I just wanted to know if they've looked at the insulation of the building at this point in the basement, in the walls, or in the roof.
I have to say we haven't. We have to go back and I think look at the 1994 drawings to see what was done. We did access the attic and we know there's bat insulation up there that caught BATT, which is fiberglass. And apparently there's an issue with the lighting there's boxes around the lights and that they cause the bulbs to overheat and basically blow up or go out. So LED lights don't have that same heat issue, or at least they can deal with it more readily. So we can start to think about getting better look at that and consider that as we're designing the heating system as well, because they need
they are clued into already. Because I'm active on the Energy Committee and am liaison with the Shared Energy Coordinator, I just want to make sure that the consultants know that Norwich Tracy Hall is on a list to get an energy assessment through the state, through the Municipal Energy Resilience Program. So it definitely will happen. The assessment has not been scheduled yet. So that is something that I think that they'll find very useful to get that information. That's likely to happen, I think, sometime this first quarter of the year. So I just wanted to highlight that for you all.
Thank you.
So maybe it's a good thing we haven't looked at the insulation yet, because they can help us do that and in tandem and work together, and then use that information to give back to our mechanical engineers. So that would be very helpful to have.
We'll see if we can hurry that up.
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
Linda, see if you can hurry that up. Nancy Osgood?
Yes, Nancy Osgood, 191 Patrol Road. I'm speaking not on behalf of the Historic Preservation Commission, but really I'm passionate about historic preservation, as you know. And I wanted to hope that you don't have a question, but a comment. And I was so pleased to hear the architects talk about the history of Tracy Hall and the fact that it is on the National Register, and that it would seem as though everyone is happy to have whatever renovations you decide to do to be in compliance with the Department of the Interior and keeping the Tracy Hall on the National Register. So thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, we have, I think, about 15 more minutes. We could go around again. Does anyone?
It's enough to deal with the functional, with the physical assessment, right? But nonetheless, I would be curious to know like how you sort of conduct, like this is supposed to be public outreach, but obviously people are also taking it in and learning some of these issues for the first time, so, which I'm sure you can appreciate. So can you just talk about successful like public outreach that you've done in other Vermont communities, particularly interested in getting children and youth involved? This is a very active space for younger people, younger folks. And there's certainly.
I guess we're doing it right now, but to reach the youth might be a good challenge to bring to the table, I think, in general. So maybe there could be a joint outreach to the schools, might be, and Roger, if you want to be a liaison, that might be a thing that could be done. I don't have the contacts probably, but someone in town that could help us reach out to either high school or middle school, whoever would like. If there's an energy committee at the school who's interested in it, we'd be happy to collaborate with them on ideas and knowledge and help transfer that. So if we can make it available to them too on some such website or whatever they have, we'd be happy to do that too. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm open to ideas.
Yes, you did. I mean, I think like ultimately, like in terms of function, this needs to function as people's offices. But the rest of it is a community space, particularly for youth. So they should be at the table. So I appreciate you putting the challenge back to us.
I'm trying to think of the rec director whom we met. Maybe there's a way we could. Am I right?
With a focus group.
Yeah, maybe a little focus group, and we'd love to hear from them. And
that's great.
For high school youth is Jeannie Graham, nutrient. She's very interested in climate. I believe there's a climate club.
Mary, can you contact Judy?
It's Jeannie Kornfeld. Yes, I could do that.
good. Then you say something.
My comment ties in with what Mary was saying. Jeannie Cornfield did the youth and March intensive on the septic for the school. And there may be some kind of March intensive project that they could do that would tie in with what you're doing on this assessment,
Okay. Yeah, we'll think about it. We'll brainstorm.
the elementary school.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering, as you look at the functionality of the building, would it be prudent to move people around? Say, maybe the listers shouldn't be in this room, maybe somebody else should be in that room. And it might make more sense to reassign the locations.
I think that's on the table as far as it's okay with us to explore that. I think we'd want to explore that possibility to improve the functionality of those spaces. So
again, I noticed during your presentation that you talked about problems with cooling systems in the building, projections of climate change. Are you able to take that into account? And does that affect your recommendations that that the climate?
I don't know if they have modeling for that or how they do that, but I can certainly ask the question. But typically, if we button up the envelope really well, it mitigates.
So I had a sort of menu of options so that we could make some decisions. I know that's a ultimate question, but.
So I'm going to go back to so we do have a methodology that we're following that was in response to the RFP. So I'm going to go back to that. And we've kind of completed phase one, which is the existing condition documents, which you saw the plans of. And then we've also identified deficiencies. We have a little bit more work to do with insulation, obviously. And if Linda has the phase two, establishing the programmatic requirements. So if we want to keep everything the way it is, you'd have the building the same way. But it sounds like you want to move a few things around. So we'll explore those options. And then part three is the development of the schematic plans, which would be we take these plans, all these information, and we develop systems that will accommodate them physically and functionally. So the timeline is really somewhat dependent on the town and your manager to assist us in formulating that.
Okay.
So I would say though, if that comes in the first quarter, we'd be looking at shortly thereafter, we could have some plans ready and we could do the functional parts separate from the mechanical parts.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all concerned about the heating system.
Yeah. And we know that we got to get to, everyone knows that the heating system is crucial and that could happen potentially somewhat independently, but I think we still want that report to find out and the insulation values. Those are two critical pieces. So.
I don't know if your hand is just still up, but Linwood Andrews is a new person. So Bree, you were first, but is your hand just up?
I think it's just up. Sorry. I don't know why.
That's okay. That's okay. I can remember that. Linwood?
Yes, hi, thank you. Linwood Andrews, Meeting House Road. I'm so glad to hear that you're going to be including the voices of the young children and teens in this process. If we're looking at a 30-year cycle, certainly they're the ones who are going to be using this building at some point. I also would like to ask the question as to whether anyone is thinking of Tracy Hall as an emergency community shelter space with the increasing storms and sort of weather catastrophes that we seem to be experiencing and are likely to continue to experience. There may be a time when we need to have a space where people can come and seek shelter, whether it be from, inundation, flood, or heat. And so I'm wondering if any thought has been given to that.
Thank you. And our emergency person.
So there is an answer to that, which is that currently Tracy Hall is not a shelter, but it is a place to gather and see if that was needed on a short-term basis.
Is there a community shelter in town?
Actually, our fire chief is here and he might be able to answer that. I believe there is in Hartford, if I'm not mistaken.
What's the
Answer for your question.
Joan Circle, Fire Chief. Yeah, so to elaborate, anytime they've used the word shelter, shelter is a term of art, meaning that when you claim a shelter, where's the camera, by the way? When you claim a shelter, you have to provide certain things to the populace who seeks to use it, right? You have to have a certain amount of bathrooms, right? You have to be handicap accessible. There's a whole slew of things. And so we do not have the resources in the town of Norwich to provide a shelter. The shelter that we have for the Upper Valley is run by the Red Cross, and that is the Hartford High School. That is the closest shelter where you can overnight, et cetera, with pets. It's a bona fide shelter, and the Red Cross is responsible for standing that up when the need arises. What we offer our citizens here in Norwich are cooling and warming centers. The Public Safety Building, Tracy Hall at this point, as well as Marion Cross School are all part of the warming and cooling that we offer the town citizenry. We don't have the infrastructure, nor do we have the personnel to adequately staff, which is one of the things you have to do with the shelter. You have to provide staff for that as well. So that's why we really rely on the Red Cross and the community, its community service for that, for the Upper Valley. And we provide those localized warming and cooling offerings for Norwich citizens.
Well, that's very useful to know. So it sounds like having whatever we need in Tracy Hall to make it an adequate warming and cooling shelter would be an important consideration as we formulate these plans.
Sure. I mean, we have that already. You know, every year we submit something called the Local Emergency Management Plan, which lists and enumerates all of the emergency services that we provide for the town, and that gets deposited with the state every year. Tracy Hall is on there as a warming and cooling shelter. We have adequate bathrooms for that. We have adequate water supply, et cetera. So we're able to offer that without kind of any strings attached. It's the larger scope of overnighting, multiple days, food, what do I do with my pets? All of those things are really carried on the shoulders of the Red Cross in a much more efficient way.
I understand. I'm just thinking more in terms of the adequate heating and cooling of Tracy Hall.
Thanks, Alex.
which is problematic at this point. But thank you.
Thank you.
Is it safe to say there's not a desire to think of Tracy Hall being an emergency shelter in the future? Is that safe to say?
I think that's accurate.
Okay, just because of the amount of work it would be. Okay. I have a couple other questions if I can ask them too. It has more to do with kind of budgeting. Does Tracy Hall have a capital account or a capital reserve?
Yeah, and I can go through, I saw those.
Yeah, there's a few kind of,
I can answer those for you.
okay, great. So we could do that offline and then just kind of itemizing it for expenses so our engineer can understand how much oil, how much electricity, those kinds of things, so we can analyze that. So we'll do it. Great.
I know, Marcia, you probably want to wrap up, but I have two quick questions, if that's okay.
Okay, go ahead, Roger.
Okay. One, just maybe as a general comment, I would be curious about how we embrace the challenge of the stage. I don't think it has any of the I don't know if it has any of the necessary attributes of a stage, like curtains and lights, activity. So I would be interested to see how that would be used as a flex space. I know that it may or may not be a contributing factor to its historical designation. So I would be curious if that could be the challenge of it being staged as a flex space. And then the other point I would make is, do you have any IT consultants as part of your work? Because I would like our meeting rooms to make far more advances in technology than what we have now. Although it is performs a miracle to have sort of these hybrid meetings. I would like to see, at least, I think we should explore the additional technological upgrades that hybrid meetings might take. So yes, embracing the stage potentially more as a flex meeting space if there is not a stated material, not just a goal, material use of that programmatically, then maybe thinking that as a flex meeting space, and then also what IT we might need. So yeah.
I know Bree has a response to the stage. Would you like to make it, Bree?
Sure. So we actually have a drama club through the school well, it's with the school children and it's run through my department, and we will in 2 weeks have a drama performance that stage during the potluck. During the summer, we also have 2 drama camps that happen on that stage, and during every potluck, we have musicians that are on that stage. We also, every other week, Miranda has the community musicians for the contra dances on the stage. So it definitely is heavily used.
So we should think about it potentially then. I don't know what it may or may not need to make it more of a performance space, because this sounds like it may or may not function as a platform for performance activities.
I highly agree with you. Yeah. So only last year did we lose the staging pulley system, but we were using it repeatedly before then. But yes, that would be a wonderful upgrade for a space that is used currently.
Okay. So yeah,
We might have to do double duty on certain things.
Yeah, so it could still be flexible, but for a multitude of groups, as long as we could get. So it's not, is the pulley system for the curtain, is that what went defunct?
So the pulley system was for the staging platforms. So you can see it, it's a series of 8 pulleys that are in the ceiling now. The only thing that was not already existing is a lighting system. We only have 2 spotlights up there. So that is something that would be an addition, but the pulley system is existing, and so are the side areas for staging.
Right. So embracing
and there's also underlighting.
Right. So embracing the challenge of a stage, whether it has more flex purposes or if it becomes more of a functional performance space. I don't know the decision makers in that, but let's not forget that. I mean, if you ask me, it should, be made into offices, but I think, as I said, it might be a historical contribution. It has to stay a stage. So maybe think about what that might look like. Thanks so much.
It might actually be conducive to a meeting space as well as a drama space, depending upon how clever you set it up. All right. Do you have any final things that you want to offer or ask?
No, just thank everyone for their participation and their eagerness to listen and offer their input. So it really helps us to move the process forward. So thank you all for showing up and continued effort to make Tracy Hall a great place to be.
Well, thank you. We're very excited about this and anxious to get going, as you can tell.
Yes.
And on Saturday, we're going to be holding another one of these. So Brennan will be giving you feedback.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. All right, we're doing pretty well here. The next section is for the use of surplus funds. And for this session, I've tried to capture what we're thinking here. Behind me are 4 sheets of paper, or 5. This sheet of paper is intended to just explain as simply as possible. We had $1.8 million previously budgeted and not expended monies. We then discovered that there was about $100,000 budgeted for police equipment, which didn't come in because of, I guess, supply issues. And so it hasn't been paid for. So that's money that has already been budgeted. That left us 1.7 million of surplus. And then the select board previously decided in the budgeting process to take 700,000 of that to buy down the amount of tax that we're going to have to ask people. So for when the budget is finished and we set the tax rate. And so that leaves us exactly $1 million, more or less, as surplus to be decided. Then, as you can see over here, the select board was thinking, what would we do for articles for the people to consider what they wanted to spend that money on, that $1 million. And so the things that came up were the Tracy Hall Fund, and all feel free to get up and walk around if you want. But on each of these slides, what I've intended to do is put down the fund, the purpose of that fund, purpose of each fund is kind of written in stone when it's created. And then the article that we had just played around with. These are not written in stone. This is what we're talking about tonight. So there's the Tracy Hall Fund, the Fire Apparatus Fund, the Highway Fund, and then Roger had thought about generators because of climate emergency. So we're still thinking, and now we want to hear what you're thinking. So what I would like to do at this point is just offer that the departments who are here who want to make a presentation about things could come up and speak for, 3 minutes or so. And then we can open it up to questions and move on. And then whatever ideas you've all got, we'd love to hear them. Okay? So Alex, you're here. And Matt, do you want to?
Sure. We need some time to set up the.
So I think the last meeting that we had, we talked about, I have some slides that go along with what we're speaking about. And you had mentioned that I could share my screen for those of us in Zoom land. All right, cool. And also because I hate relying on technology, we also provide these on internet so that you put that.
Is this somebody's?
So these are our, this is essentially our slide deck.
We're not in any places.
Because I've experienced what it's like to sit over here and not be able to see the screen.
Point of information, am I talking to you or the screen?
It's supposed to pick up you as you talk.
The problem is it's kind of looking at the back of your head.
Right.
You have a good side?
I do my good side, I don't know.
So how do you have to let me share my screen?
You are a co-host right now, so you should be able to.
And
share your screen.
Okay, so go to.
There should be at the bottom, Matt.
Yeah.
A little tab that says share screen. I think if you click that, it will.
You see it?
It will pull up your desktop.
Yeah, it's not, there it is, the green one.
Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. Screen
And then share the whiteboard.
there.
Sure what that means.
I guess I gotta
There you
give you access.
While we have a break, has everybody signed the sign-in sheet? Almost there?
1 second, sorry. It made me like restart.
Shades and memories of the first select board meeting in the police and fire building, remember that?
Do you want me to start? I could do the highway garage.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
While we await the technology here. So this one's quite a bit simpler because we really don't have a whole lot of information to work with right now. But we have certainly heard from the DPW, Chris Kaufman, who feels that they have a number of improvements and renovations that are going to be required or are currently required. And we saw that firsthand this past year when we realized that the actual steel pillars that were holding up the roof of that had deteriorated to the point where we had to basically close the building for a short period of time and repair those. So that was an extreme example, but there's certainly a significant amount of investment, deferred maintenance that is going to have to occur there, I think, in the near future. So the place marker there was $200,000, which would be kind of set aside. I think the first thing that we would want to do is to get an architect or an engineer, or maybe both, to come in and kind of provide some expertise there as to what priorities would be kind of similar to what we're hearing with Tracy Hall. Because Chris has thoughts, but again, he's not a technical expert there. And I guess that's really the piece here is, would the taxpayers, knowing that we have this surplus, like to put, in this case, the number is $200,000 that was suggested, that
Fund, the construction of kind of a machinery shed could be covered.
I think of it, yeah, for and maintain the structure of the public works garage.
Okay.
I think that is clearly within the purview of that fund.
Does anyone, any of the board members first have a question? If not, I will go, yeah, Pam.
I just want clarification. Are we talking work on both the existing garage and the construction of a new shed for equipment?
I don't think we had the construction of a new shed included. That was discussed. I think what Chris had talked about initially was renovations or improvements to the existing facility. I don't know that they couldn't be split and we couldn't use from that same fund for both potentially, but his initial thought, I think, was the priority was trying to shore up the facility that they have.
My initial understanding was that it was a shed to protect the equipment that is not under roof now. So, okay, I'm not sure how I got the wrong impression.
That was my understanding too.
That was talked about. I know in the budget, the idea that if we have new equipment, we want to protect it from the weather. How do we do that with the existing facility? So I think we could think of it as, this fund or this appropriation to that fund could be used for both of those. And we might want to think about the priorities.
So that's where it gets down to the language of the article.
That would, to me, be different than to build a new facility.
Right. So, if the board decided that they wanted to add some money for the protective shed, that might be a different article, but, we're just kicking these things around.
Could we have an overview of what each of these categories, you have the dollar amounts up there now? He said
by an overview.
Well, the highway garage is 200,000. What are the other ones? And how does that add up?
They're on the
500, 300, 200 is
Oh, we can move over there.
a cool million. And that's without anything else being
What was the
discussed.
generators?
But no cost, I don't think, was associated with the generator.
It's irrelevant. It's just what we were talking about in multiple board meetings. It's in all of your packets. And basically, this is just to show everybody what was picked around.
Right.
If you let me, I think you just need to let me.
I think we just all got kicked off. Right.
On the 24th of January, we, the board, are going to have to make some decisions. So that's why we want to hear from the public. So
right now, there's nothing set aside in these numbers for generators, but that's something that could be allocated if that's.
These are ideas.
Right.
We're going to concretely decide what we are going to put on the warrant. This could be it. This could be very different.
Just trying to understand what's up there now.
All right. So we're having a significant technical issue here.
I think
Matt, are you still on?
I'm not, I'm waiting to be let in again.
Okay. Marcia, you are still
I'm
on. I am not.
I wonder,
I'm going to try to rejoin here.
can you start your discussion? Well, first, let's just ask, does anybody have any questions about the highway garage? Cheryl?
How much is in the highway garage fund before we make an allocation to it?
I don't know right now.
That would be helpful.
So
Okay.
can I make a comment?
Yes, Roger.
So I think it's worth maybe talking to the extent possible to the public about the physical plant of what is known as the highway garage, but is not just one physical building necessarily, right? I think I don't know necessarily the particular intention of the $200,000 proposal linked to what is needed for the DPW, garage. But, I think there's been some discussion between the town manager and the planning director about, the floor drain, the garage floor drain and its holding tanks, proposed pole barn designs that you were discussing. other conceptual site planning for the garage, so that way the vehicles themselves could possibly into it, right? A lot of the actual doors are not large enough for the bill to go in. And so I don't think anyone wants to speak to specific sort of discuss more to the extent possible about the sort of just talk about what you've talked about, right? Like there's
I think we've gone as far as we can for the moment. And I really do want to get to the public, and I think they're here for, other things as well. Are you all ready to go?
Yeah, I'm just hitting share screen, but it's not.
Okay.
I think you should just go with the non-screen share.
Okay. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Is it possible to re-enable it?
I don't think I've
Well,
done that.
The other thing that we could do is start hearing from the public, and then when you're ready,
Well, I think we may not be ready in terms of this. So we've passed out some handouts for folks, which is really our slide deck. And that's what you have as well. So we'll have to go the low-tech route.
Try it again, Matt. I just reissued you a co-host there.
Oh, it says now I have to admit somebody. All right, so here we go.
If I may.
yes, you may.
Why are we still monkeying around with technology like this? Can't we get this organized in Norwich? Because we're relying on a Zoom platform, and we're relying on our internet system, and we're doing the best we can. Yeah, I understand we're doing the best we can, but there's got to be something better.
Thank you, everyone, folks in attendance, and obviously the select board and folks out in Zoom land for entertaining our presentation. One of the challenges that I found in preparing for tonight was to ask myself the question, how do we make a familiar topic not boring? We as the fire department have talked about this and the things that we will present this evening many times, be it in the budget hearings, be it in funding requests during the regular course of the year. So none of this should be surprising to you. For instance, the amount of time and effort that the fire department puts into serving the community, the amount of money that we save the town in terms of not having to pay for a full-time fire department and EMS service, not having a pretty good ISO rating, which keeps our insurance premiums down as a town. So those are all the things that we know, right? That are concrete and different outcomes from what the fire department provides. So I thought really tonight, what I would try to do is frame this in a different way, in that I would like to frame this as maintaining a level of expected service, right? We have an expectation in the town of our fire and EMS service to provide a certain level of service to the public. And it's difficult to do that when our apparatus is not up to snuff. We know now that fire apparatus is doubling in cost. There are 2 to 3 years outreach now for fulfilling orders. Took us a year and a half over time to get our new engine. So planning is incredibly important. And how we plan is really based on our capital plan. And the capital plan has not been funded for several years. And we've talked about this now quite often. So I wanted to frame our conversation in those terms. One of the things that is a kind of an unintended consequence of having apparatus that is not maintained is our continual push and pull with recruitment and retention. You know, when new recruits see a well-run fire department with good apparatus, functional, meeting safety standards, it's much easier to attract and maintain folks in the fire service, not only nationally, but here in Norwich. So I think that's some of the things, something that we haven't talked about as a consequence of not having adequate funding.
for our apparatus. We know that there'll be an increased demand. I just met with a citizen on Beaver Meadow Road or New Boston Road earlier that has bought a lot of land and is thinking about putting up multiple homes on it. So, we know Norwich is growing and we have to grow with it in terms of our ability to provide for fire defense. So I wanted to kind of open up the conversation with you about that, the minutia of what we're talking about.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your patience. So what we're asking for is what the interim town finance director suggests they're going through and working on a current capital plan for Norwich. After looking at sort of all the overall scope of all the needs and wants of all the departments, Joyce put together like really comprehensive capital replacement plan, and she recommended that we ask for $300,000 appropriation from the ARPA funds in order to get us back to a capital apparatus plan that will take us forward and allow us to do the replacements that we're going to need for the next decade plus. And part of the reason that we got fairly far behind in our yearly appropriations, I will show you here. Let's see. So this is a graph, this is a 10-year graph of our apparatus funds appropriations that begins over in 2014. And it's kind of going along. And then we get the July 2017 superstorm. And the town of Norwich had to pay for initially to do a million plus repairs to town roads and everything. So at that point, the select board decided to dip into what were regular appropriations in capital planning. And you have that giant trough there, and we were told that at some point that would get made up, but as we know that with capital planning, it's very hard to make up the difference. So that's how we're really fairly behind. So we also decided to look out and see, are we asking for something that is not? Are there any comparisons out there? And so luckily, we were able to turn right to our neighbor in Thetford, who actually has a very similar, a slightly smaller population, slightly less housing units, and a slightly lower taxable, resources. But their fire department for the past 10 years started a capital replacement plan. Oh, and they have a very similar fleet to ours, both in value and size and different trucks. And a decade ago, their select board committed to appropriately funding an apparatus replacement fund, and basically beginning in 2014 and increasing it 4% each year. And they also never cut appropriations during any of the years. So the result of that is this graph here, where if you look at the blue line, that's Thetford's appropriations each year, and you can see that it steadily goes up compared to ours, which is the red line, which unfortunately takes a big dip for a number of years. And over those 10 years, for a similar fleet, Thetford, the fire department, was able to appropriate about $398,000 more than Norwich over the course of a decade. So that just kind of hits home how important it is to regularly fund capital replacement plans and commit to appropriately funding them from the very beginning. In this case, it just so happens that we both were funding essentially the same amount in 2014. So this is kind of a nice example. This second graph here is just totals going forward. And again, this shows sort of the disparity. If you look at the end, fiscal year 24, they've saved up $980,000, and we have a lot less, $398,000 less than they do. So that's why we're in front of you. That's why Joyce recommended this. We are asking in this unique point in time where the select board actually has $1 million to decide kind of what to do with. We're asking for 300,000 to be added into our fire apparatus designated fund. I put before you, we have kept a very planning on replacing fire trucks is a tricky business, especially nowadays where prices have risen dramatically, and the turnaround time for a new piece of apparatus is now 24 to 48 months. So that is a long time planning we have to do. This is our 10-year capital replacement schedule. And as you can see, unfortunately, there's a fair amount of red in there. And so we will not be able to keep up even close with our apparatus replacement in the current model. With the $300,000 surplus funds, you'll see that all the red nearly gets out of there. And this isn't an exact science. So like the little bit of red at the end is like, give or take. We have one other thing just to compare that was in the notes and everything, but we didn't quite touch upon, but like Thetford replaces their pieces of apparatus. They're on a 16-year replacement schedule for each piece of apparatus. The NFPA, which kind of governs us, makes suggests about a 20-year turnaround for a piece of apparatus. Even this plan, we've taken the lifetime of each piece of apparatus and stretched it out to average about 26 years. So we're not really like, I always wonder, are we asking for the Mercedes or are we asking for kind of like the Subaru version of what we're doing here? And so we're not turning it around. We're not turning around our pieces of apparatus. We're squeezing every penny out of what we're asking. A 26-year turnaround for a piece of apparatus is fairly old.
Let me just, and what's happening is, and I think we've talked about this before, is that the flip side of that is that we're spending incredible amount of money maintaining what we have because it's so old. So there are direct consequences to not only are we not able to keep up with current technology and safety, et cetera, but we're also spending more to keep our old fleet running.
Thank you very much. This is very clear. We're going to have to move on.
Yeah, that's fine. And so we're done. And I very much appreciate you letting us.
I have one question, if I might, while they're still here. Looking at your surplus with the funds, FY31, you have 527,663, and you have that same amount in FY33.
Right. So that's because of the the 4-year build time. And so what we can do, so that truck is like $1 million engine out 10 years from now. And so, but we're able to split that into 2 different pieces and pay the deposit when we first sign the contract and pay the remainder when we get delivery. And that would be over the course of like.
Okay, right. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a cut and paste error.
Totally, I understood. And actually, I should have noted that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen who are here, anyone who wants to come up and opine on what they think money should be spent on, and I would just make one clarification. Everybody keeps getting confused. The ARPA money is not what this is. The ARPA money was used for paying salaries. The money that we had budgeted for salaries is now extra. That's the surplus. So it's money that you paid for in your taxes. So now, if someone would like to come up, we'd love to hear from you.
So I'm going to try to transcribe here. But my penmanship will not be as nice as I'm curious.
Here you go. So Brennan's just going to take notes about who's got ideas and what they are. And then all of this is going in the hopper for us to think about and make decisions on the 24th. So please don't be shy. Come to the magic table. Tell us what you want.
Thank you, Marcia and folks, and thanks to the fire department for that information, which was awfully interesting. I'm Jack Cushman. I'm a resident of Norwich. A few years ago, I was the chair of the Article 36 Task Force, which reached extensive consensus recommendations for the town. I think it's fair to say none of them have been followed. I would like to start by saying, please don't tell me that this is not the ARPA money. We did a shell game, but we have $1 million because the Biden administration, in the course of the pandemic, stepped up and decided to have a humongous capital investment program.
You know the history, and I hate to move you on, but.
I'm going to make it in 3 minutes.
Okay, good.
It was intended to address capital needs for climate change. And at the first meeting of this select board, after the town decided not to borrow money for a Tracy Hall project, I stood before this body and I said, bear in mind, there is infrastructure money coming your way, which will cover the cost of this project. And you should be aggressive in obtaining that money. Now, the Article 36 Task Force said, we must move quickly where there are ready solutions for climate change. We must address both of the main areas of consumption, buildings and transportation. Ready solutions include Tracy Hall, and we must avoid locking in fossil fuels in new investments. Now, I was awfully interested to hear that the problem with the fire department funding was caused by this dip, which happened. Why? Because of an intense rainfall in 2017, which to this day is affecting our capital commitments in this town. It was $1 million. That was the month I moved to Norwich. I remember it very well. My driveway was washed out. And since then, I've been coming to the select board and saying, we have an obligation to do what we can do to cut our town's emissions of fossil fuels so that we don't commit our children to a life where every select board meeting is a road collapse here, a forest collapse there, a pollution crisis here. Let's step to the plate and eliminate fossil fuels from our economy in Norwich. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Cheryl Lindbergh.
Yes, Cheryl Lindbergh. I did go to the audit report and found out balances that I was curious about. So to put it in perspective, the Tracy Hall fund is at $65,800 roughly. And the fire department a fund that we're talking about is at $608,000 to my best recollection of looking at this small print. And while I know that we are also blessed with having nearby fire departments to support us with mutual aid and all, we don't have any other Tracy Hall building. We don't have a place for the employees to work that is a healthy and wonderful place to work. 30 years ago, it got fixed and it's in dire need again of being upgraded badly. What I have wanted to say since the budget process is that in putting together a budget this year as aggressive as the select board did, I don't think the right thing to do is to shield it with a $700,000 application of a surplus. If that budget is what you believe is needed, then I think a 1-year protection to the voters of Norwich is not worthwhile, because you're going to come back with the same level of budget in a next year, and there isn't going to be a $700,000 surplus to put against it. So my hope would be that you would change your minds about that and put the budget forth as you have decided to do, which is aggressive. I would have hoped you would have put together a less aggressive capital replacement plan and perhaps used a few $100,000 to cushion it. But overall, I would highly recommend not using $700,000 for a reduction of 1 year of taxes, put forth the 1,700,000 surplus, and spread that out, giving most of it to Tracy Hall, which is what we really, really need to be working on. And the condition of our building here, the town's building, is much less quality than the other buildings that are being used, for instance, by fire and police, which we've taken care of recently. So those are my thoughts.
We actually have already voted the 700,000.
I agree.
As you advocated on your listserv post, the only thing people can do is vote down the budget.
That's right.
Right.
And make us work on it again. I agree.
Anyone else? Peter?
I got a handout for you all.
You're serious? Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. I like handouts. I thought you were joking.
No, I got a handout. I got a handout for the crowd. Copy machines, all good.
At the same time, I'm introducing Peter Orner of Norwich. Peter.
Hi, so thank you for inviting us to speak tonight, and it's been a really enlightening meeting. I'm Peter Orner, representing a group of residents that have been advocating for walkability issues for about the last 6 years. And we're here tonight to put forth what we're calling a modest proposal that would address longstanding concerns about pedestrian safety. Before I'm going to read this, but let me just say that a lot of talk tonight about kids, a lot of talk about fossil fuels and climate change. And, we are very much of a piece with this by wanting and sort of advocating for walkability and not driving into town when we don't need to. Just if you're thinking about walking along Beaver Meadow tonight from just a mile into town, it would be impossible. It would be absolutely impossible at this point. We are an all-season people. It would seem to me that that's something that I think we should be able to address to walk in the winter. So in order to address longstanding concerns about pedestrian safety, we propose that Norwich allocate between 80 to 90,000, less than 10% of the surplus, to create a safer and more walkable route to and from town, as well as provide access to public facilities, including parks, Huntley Meadow, Barrett Playground and Pizza Oven, and the Ballard Trail, as well as the new Kids Bridge, by completing a pedestrian corridor from Heritage Lane to the Barrett Memorial Park on the west side of Beaver Meadow, and from Huntley Street, the second Huntley Street, second entrance north Huntley, to Moore Lane on the east side of Beaver Meadow. And when we say pedestrian corridor, what we mean is not a sidewalk. I emphasize that. We are talking about other materials such as gravel, wood chips, crushed stone, etc. Completing this corridor would allow residents of Beaver Meadow, Dutton Hill, Bragg Hill, Glen Ridge, and Huntley Street, and beyond, of course, walkable access to and from town. It would improve safety and accessibility for bus riders who use the advanced transit stop at Heritage Lane, Glen Ridge, and Moore Lane. It would also go a long way towards the decades-long goal of completing a safer loop from Main Street to Beaver Meadow to Moore Lane to Turnpike for all of Norwich's walkers. We've consulted with Town Manager Brennan Duffy on this plan, and Brennan's vision for improved walkability in Norwich is deeply appreciated. Signed myself, Peter Warner, Shoshana Hort, Andrew Scher, Alberto Rodriguez, Elliot Herrick, Colleen Fox, Vince Crow, Amy Stringer, Jan Lesperi, Katie Crouch, Angie Del Banco, Ricardo Siri, and many others. And we're not putting forth our own ballot measure. We attempted that once. We gathered over 300 signatures a few years ago, but we worked with you all on a ballot measure, which we deeply appreciated. And because we've been working with Brennan, we very much like to work with the board on this, what we're calling a modest proposal for two separate corridors to increase safety and walkability on our roads.
You had me up until you said two corridors. Where's the second corridor?
So there's two separate ideas here, which are the Heritage Lane to Barrett Memorial Park, which is the pizza oven. That's one. And then from Huntley Street North Huntley, North Huntley is a circle, so next to 5, because as Brendan has pointed out, and many others have pointed out, there is a safer walkable route on Huntley. And we concede that, even though our friends on Dutton Hill and Beaver Meadow are emphasizing that doesn't entirely address their needs. This is not a complete plan. This is an incomplete plan. But then what you have a problem now is you have no safe way to get to the pedestrian kids bridge. So it's wonderful for me. I walk to it all the time. If you are going from Huntley, the north point of Huntley to the kids bridge, you cannot do it safely. Absolutely can't do it safely this time of year, but you really can't do it safely any time of year. So this is 2 separate pieces of completing the loop. It's, again, a modest proposal as opposed to some of our other proposals, which were less modest, even though in those cases we were asking for federal help and state help. But in this case, you asked us for ideas, and here we are. So
Perfect. That's great. Priscilla?
We did at one point in our budget discussions have a propose a pedestrian safety fund that was going to have $10,000 in it. And that wasn't really for a walkable path. It was more like signage.
Don't conflate that with what Chris Kaufman was asking for, which was, isn't that the one?
I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's $10,000 and it's.
This is a separate distinction.
No, I understand what Peter is proposing. It's a completely separate thing.
But his wasn't just about, Chris's just wasn't entirely about pedestrians. It was about stuff falling.
Yes.
See, everything to make
It
things
was
safe.
trees and guardrails and things like that.
Yeah, and it was only $10,000.
Yeah. All right. I think this is very clear. Thank you. And I think incremental steps are way to go.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Can we hear from other people, please? Cheryl?
Yeah, I just wanted to there is a sidewalk reserve fund with $106,000 in it. That hopefully is being considered by the select board for something like this.
Yep. Please.
Conrad Poehler, 91 Huntley Street. I really appreciate Peter talking about the walkability and Cheryl talking about the sidewalk fund. I live on the north end of Huntley and I couldn't walk here safely today, not because of what we don't have, but because we haven't maintained what we do have. I couldn't get over the bridge because it was still covered in snow, because there's rebar coming through it. So I'm just wondering if any of this or that $100,000 in sidewalk fund is being thought about in any time frame to repair what we already do have.
There's rebar coming through the Moore Lane Bridge? Is that?
No, the one right at the church.
The one at the church. Okay.
Right before Heritage Lane.
Yeah, the Catholic Church. So my wife actually fell on that on Christmas Day because it was not cleared. And it wasn't cleared because it's not cleared today. They stopped clearing from the church at the bridge.
Okay, Brennan, what's the proper procedure when people have problems? Should they call your office?
You can probably reach out to Chris at DPW and let him know the concern.
Yeah, and is there any plans to repair? I've been here for 18 years. I don't think they've ever redone the sidewalks into town. We're talking about adding now, and we haven't taken care of what we have.
Sidewalks are always a murky question because you can talk to this, I suppose, because they're supposedly owned by, or lots of them, by the fire district. And there's an uneasy distinction about who's caring for what. And that's one of the things that I would love to sink my teeth into because I think it's too murky. So there's no answer for you, but
and it's, it's the entire neighborhood that is concerned that we can't even walk into town anymore.
Okay.
Thank you. We own 10,000 of the 15,000 feet of sidewalk in town, and the town has not maintained those 10,000 feet. The 5,000 feet of sidewalk owned by the fire district, they have made the decision that they will not.
Really eager to just increase walkability. And I also do want to say, I advocate for using some of that sidewalk fund to fix and maintain the sidewalks because it really has been an issue that they haven't been fixed. So that's it. Just wanted to lend my support and
briefly share a little history. Several years ago, many years ago, a successful petition was undertaken at the